What happens when Hollywood's most beloved action hero goes head-to-head with late-night television's most controversial host? You won't believe what unfolds when Arnold Schwarzenegger sits down for what was supposed to be a routine promotional interview, only to find himself in the middle of a verbal battlefield that would leave audiences speechless and social media erupting in outrage. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what unfolds when two titans of entertainment clash in the most explosive late-night confrontation we've ever witnessed. Last night's episode of Jimmy Kimmel Live started like any other. The studio audience was buzzing with excitement as they waited for the legendary Arnold Schwarzenegger to make his entrance. The former governor turned Hollywood icon was scheduled to promote his latest environmental documentary, a passion project close to his heart that focuses on climate change activism and sustainable living practices. But what began as a standard celebrity interview quickly devolved into something far more sinister, revealing a side of Jimmy Kimmel that left viewers questioning everything they thought they knew about their favorite late-night host. As Arnold walked onto the stage with his characteristic confidence, flashing that famous smile and flexing playfully for the crowd, the atmosphere seemed electric with positive energy. The audience erupted in applause, chanting his name as he settled into the guest chair. Kimmel, wearing his typical smirk, seemed almost too eager to dive into the conversation. "Arnold, great to have you back on the show," Kimmel began, his tone carrying an undertone that experienced viewers might have recognized as a warning sign. "I have to say, watching you transition from action movies to politics to environmental activism, it's been quite the journey. Some might say it's been a bit all over the place." Arnold, maintaining his composure, chuckled good-naturedly. "Well, Jimmy, when you've lived as long as I have and experienced as much as I have, you learn that life is about growth, about finding new ways to contribute to society. My documentary isn't just about climate change, it's about taking responsibility for the world we're leaving behind." But Kimmel wasn't content to let the conversation flow naturally. Instead, he leaned forward with that calculating look that his critics know all too well. Taking responsibility, that's interesting coming from someone who drove Hummers for decades and built a career on movies that glorified violence and excessive consumption. Isn't this environmental crusade just a little convenient now that you're trying to rehabilitate your image? The studio fell noticeably quieter. Arnold's smile faltered for just a moment, but he recovered quickly, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "Jimmy, I think you're missing the point entirely. Yes, I made mistakes in the past. We all have. But that's exactly why I'm speaking out now. I've learned from those experiences, and I want to use my platform to make a difference." Kimmel pressed on, his voice dripping with condescension. "But isn't it hypocritical? I mean, you're sitting here talking about saving the planet while you've made millions from an industry that's one of the biggest polluters in the world. Hollywood's carbon footprint is massive, and you've been a major part of that for decades." The tension in the room was becoming palpable. Arnold shifted in his seat, his jaw tightening slightly. "Jimmy, I came here tonight to talk about solutions, about how we can work together to address these challenges. If you want to focus on the past instead of the future, that says more about you than it does about me." But Kimmel was just getting started. "Oh, I'm sorry, did I strike a nerve? I thought the Terminator could handle a little tough questioning. Or maybe that's just another role you played." The audience began to shift uncomfortably, sensing that something was going very wrong. Arnold's eyes flashed with the first real sign of anger. "You know what, Jimmy? I've been coming on this show for years, and I've always respected you as a host. But right now, you're not acting like a professional. You're acting like someone who's more interested in creating controversy than having a real conversation." Kimmel leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying the reaction he was getting. "Controversy? I'm just asking the questions that your fans want answered. Like how someone who's made a career out of playing tough guys suddenly becomes an environmental activist when it's politically convenient." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Arnold's hands gripped the arms of his chair, his knuckles whitening slightly. Politically convenient? Jimmy, I was advocating for environmental policies when I was governor of California, long before it became fashionable. I put my political career on the line for these issues. Right, your political career, Kimmel shot back with obvious sarcasm. The same political career that ended in scandal and disappointment? The same career where you left California in worse shape than when you found it? The studio audience gasped audibly. Even Kimmel's most loyal viewers could sense that their host had crossed a line. Arnold stood up slightly from his chair, his imposing frame casting a shadow over the desk. Now wait just a minute, Jimmy. You want to attack my movies, fine. You want to question my environmental credentials, okay? But don't you dare question my service to the people of California. Kimmel, seemingly oblivious to the mounting tension, or perhaps reveling in it, continued his assault. Service? Is that what we're calling it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you used the governor's office as a stepping stone back to Hollywood relevance. Arnold's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper, the kind of tone that anyone who knew him understood meant he was reaching his breaking point. You know what your problem is, Jimmy? You sit behind this desk every night making jokes about people who are actually trying to make a difference in the world. When was the last time you did anything meaningful besides tear other people down? The confrontation was reaching a boiling point, and everyone in the studio could feel it. What had started as an uncomfortable interview was rapidly becoming something much more volatile, setting the stage for an explosion that would rock the entertainment world to its core. Kimmel's face twisted into a cruel smile, the kind that made his audience realize they were witnessing something deeply unsettling. Oh, meaningful? That's rich coming from someone whose biggest contribution to society was pretending to be a robot. At least I don't have to rely on steroids and special effects to make people pay attention to me. The audience collectively gasped. Even Kimmel's most dedicated fans in the crowd looked shocked at the personal nature of the attack. Arnold's face went stone cold, his Austrian accent becoming more pronounced as his anger intensified. You want to go there, Jimmy? Really? You want to make this personal? It's already personal, Arnold. You came on my show acting like some kind of environmental saint, but we both know what you really are. You're a washed-up action star desperately trying to stay relevant by jumping on whatever bandwagon will get you attention. Arnold rose to his full height, his 6'2" frame towering over the desk. I've accomplished more in 1 year of my life than you have in your entire career. I built businesses, I served my state, I changed lives. What have you done besides sit behind this desk and mock better people than yourself? Kimmel stood up, as well, though he looked significantly smaller next to the former bodybuilder. Better people? Is that what we're calling serial cheaters and failed politicians now? Because last I checked, your approval ratings as governor were in the toilet, and your marriage fell apart because you couldn't keep it in your pants. The studio went dead silent. Even the cameramen looked uncomfortable, unsure whether they should keep rolling. Arnold's hands clenched into fists at his sides, his face flushing red with rage. You crossed the line, Jimmy. You just crossed a line. You can't uncross. But Kimmel, drunk on the power of his position and seemingly unaware of the danger he was courting, pushed even harder. What line? The truth? The truth that you're nothing more than a muscle-bound has-been who peaked in the 80s? The truth that your environmental documentary is just another desperate attempt to make people forget what a disappointment you turned out to be. Arnold's voice became eerily calm, which anyone who knew him understood was far more dangerous than his anger. You know what, Jimmy? I've met a lot of bullies in my life. In the gym, in Hollywood, in politics. But I've never met someone so pathetic that they would use their platform to tear down someone who's actually trying to help the world. Help the world? Kimmel laughed mockingly. You mean help yourself. Everything you do is about Arnold Schwarzenegger. The movies, the politics, the bodybuilding, even this environmental thing. It's all just one big ego trip. The former governor, stepped closer to the desk, his presence becoming increasingly intimidating. At least I've actually done things with my life. I came to America with nothing and built an empire. I revolutionized bodybuilding, became the biggest action star in the world, and served 8 years as governor of the largest state in the country. What's your biggest accomplishment, Jimmy? Making fun of people on television? Kimmel's confidence began to waver slightly, but his arrogance wouldn't let him back down. My accomplishment is calling out frauds like you, people who pretend to be something they're not for applause and attention. Fraud? Arnold's voice rose dangerously. I'm a fraud? You sit here every night reading jokes written by other people, pretending to be funny, pretending to care about issues you know nothing about. You're nothing but a puppet, Jimmy. A mouthpiece for other people's thoughts. The audience was now completely silent, watching in stunned disbelief as their beloved late-night host engaged in what could only be described as character assassination. Kimmel, perhaps realizing he was losing the crowd but too committed to his attack to stop, decided to go nuclear. At least I don't have to live with the fact that I destroyed my family for a quick thrill with the help. At least my kids can look at me with respect instead of disappointment. That was the moment everything changed. Arnold's face went completely white, then flushed with a rage that seemed to fill the entire studio. You just made the biggest mistake of your pathetic little career, Jimmy. You want to attack me? Fine. You want to attack my work? Fine. But you leave my children out of this. Kimmel, seemingly oblivious to the fact that he had just awakened, something primal and dangerous, continued his assault. Why? Because the truth hurts? Because you can't handle hearing about the consequences of your actions? Arnold began moving around the desk, his massive frame casting shadows across the stage. You think hiding behind that desk makes you safe? You think your little jokes and your audience make you untouchable? Let me tell you something, you insignificant little man. The security team began moving closer, sensing that the situation was about to spiral completely out of control. Kimmel, finally beginning to understand the gravity of what he had unleashed, took a step back but continued talking, as if his words could somehow defuse the bomb he had just detonated. What are you going to do, Arnold? Hit me? On live television? That would really help your comeback tour, wouldn't it? Arnold stopped just inches from Kimmel, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout could have. You know what the difference is between us, Jimmy? When I make a mistake, I own it. I learn from it. I try to do better. But you? You're so empty inside that all you can do is try to drag other people down to your level. The studio felt like a powder keg about to explode, with everyone holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Kimmel, perhaps finally realizing the magnitude of his mistake, attempted to inject some levity back into the situation. Look, Arnold, maybe we should just take a breath here and… No! Arnold's voice cut through the air like a blade. No more jokes, no more deflection. You wanted to have this conversation, Jimmy, so let's have it. You think you can sit behind that desk every night and judge people? You think you can attack someone's family and then just laugh it off? The former governor's presence dominated the entire stage. Even the cameras seemed to focus instinctively on him as he commanded the room with an authority that reminded everyone why he had once been one of the most powerful men in California. You want to know what a real man looks like, Jimmy? A real man doesn't hide behind writers and producers and network executives. A real man stands up for what he believes in, even when it's difficult. Kimmel, now visibly shaken, tried to regain control of his own show. Arnold, I think you're overreacting here. This is comedy. This is entertainment. People expect a little back and forth. Entertainment? Arnold's laugh was devoid of any humor. You think destroying someone's reputation for laughs is entertainment? You think attacking a man's children on national television is comedy? Let me explain something to you about entertainment, Jimmy. I've been entertaining people for over 40 years. I know the difference between making people laugh and making them uncomfortable. The audience, who had been silent throughout most of the confrontation, began to murmur among themselves. Some were clearly on Arnold's side, nodding in agreement with his words. Others looked shocked at seeing their beloved late-night host being so thoroughly dismantled by his guest. "The problem with people like you," Arnold continued, his voice growing stronger with each word, "is that you've forgotten what it means to have respect for other human beings. You've become so used to treating people like punchlines that you've lost sight of the fact that we're all trying to do our best in this world." Kimmel attempted one more time to salvage the situation, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. "Arnold, look, if I said something that offended you—" "If?" Arnold's eyes flashed with renewed anger. "If you said something offensive, you attacked my environmental work, you mocked my political service, you brought up my personal struggles, and then you had the audacity to drag my children into this circus. There's no if about it, Jimmy. You crossed every line there is to cross." The security team had positioned themselves strategically around the stage, but they seemed uncertain about whether to intervene. After all, Arnold hadn't made any physical threats, and technically, this was still just a conversation, albeit an incredibly intense one. Arnold straightened to his full height and looked directly into the main camera, addressing the audience at home rather than Kimmel. "You know what? I came here tonight to talk about something I'm passionate about. Something that affects all of us. Climate change, environmental responsibility, leaving a better world for our children. But instead, I got ambushed by someone who seems to think that destroying people is more important than building them up." He turned back to Kimmel, who was now sitting behind his desk looking smaller than anyone had ever seen him. "You want to know what's really sad, Jimmy? You have this incredible platform. You have millions of people who watch you every night. You could use that influence to make the world better, to inspire people, to bring out the best in your guests. Instead, you choose to tear people down for cheap laughs." Kimmel tried one final desperate attempt to save face. "Arnold, this is what late-night television is. This is what people expect. Johnny Carson did it. David Letterman did it." "Don't you dare," Arnold interrupted, his voice thundering through the studio. "Don't you dare compare yourself to those legends. Johnny Carson was a gentleman. David Letterman was tough but fair. You? You're just a bully with a microphone." The weight of Arnold's words seemed to settle over the entire studio like a heavy blanket. Even the crew members were exchanging glances, clearly uncomfortable with what they were witnessing. This wasn't just a heated interview anymore. It was a complete dismantling of everything Jimmy Kimmel represented as a host. Arnold began walking back toward his chair, but instead of sitting down, he reached for his jacket. "You know what, Jimmy? I've had enough. I came here as your guest, with respect and professionalism, ready to have a meaningful conversation. But you clearly have no interest in meaningful conversation. You're only interested in creating drama and controversy at other people's expense. Arnold, please, let's just finish the interview," Kimmel pleaded, his usual smugness completely gone. "We can talk about your documentary, we can—" "No." Arnold's response was final and absolute. "I'm not going to sit here and let you continue to disrespect me, my family, and everything I've worked for. This interview is over." He slipped on his jacket with deliberate precision, every movement calculated and powerful. The studio audience watched in stunned silence as one of Hollywood's biggest stars prepared to walk off one of television's biggest stages. "You know what the saddest part is, Jimmy?" Arnold said, turning back one final time. "You had a chance, tonight, to have a real conversation with someone who's lived an extraordinary life. You could have learned something. Your audience could have learned something. Instead, you chose to make it about your own ego and your need to prove how clever you think you are." Kimmel sat frozen behind his desk, seemingly unable to process what was happening. His writers and producers were frantically trying to figure out how to salvage the situation, but it was clearly too late for damage control. Arnold looked out at the audience one more time, his expression softening slightly. "To the people here tonight and watching at home, I want you to know that not everyone in this industry thinks it's okay to treat people this way. There are still people who believe in respect, dignity, and having real conversations about important issues. With that, Arnold Schwarzenegger turned and walked off the Jimmy Kimmel Live stage, his footsteps echoing through the silent studio. The audience sat in stunned silence, processing what they had just witnessed. Some began to applaud, slowly at first, then building to a thunderous ovation that seemed to shake the entire building. Kimmel remained seated at his desk, his face pale and his usual cockiness completely absent. For the first time in his career, Jimmy Kimmel had been left speechless, not by a clever joke or a witty comeback, but by the raw power of someone who refused to be diminished by his tactics. As Arnold disappeared through the backstage exit, the studio fell into an uncomfortable silence that seemed to stretch on forever. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of Kimmel's humiliation, ensuring that this moment would be replayed and analyzed for years to come. The king of late night television had finally met his match, and everyone in that studio knew they had just witnessed the end of an era.